At my daughter's wedding, my sister raised her glass toward the man beside her, smiled the smile she saves for people she wants something from, and introduced me to her director as the one who never quite figured it out. A whole table of strangers turned to look at me. I smiled. I had been practicing that smile for 2 years. Then the man beside her set his glass down on the white linen. Slow. Deliberate. The way you set something down when your hands need to be still while your mind catches up. And I watched my sister's smile go somewhere it couldn't come back from. What none of them knew, what she had never once thought to ask, was that the man she had just tried to impress had spent 2 years trying to find me. My name is Diana Voss. I am 44 years old. I gave up the career that made me someone to take care of my mother while she was dying. And at my daughter's wedding, the woman who had called me a cautionary tale for 3 years introduced me to the man who had been searching for me the entire time. I did not plan what happened next. I did not need to. Welcome to Real Family Voices, where the women the room forgot are always the ones holding the better cards, even when they don't know it yet. If someone in your family has ever introduced you as the version of yourself that serves their story, pull up a chair. You already know how this feels before I say another word. Drop a comment and tell me where you are watching from. And subscribe, because the moment I push that business card back across the table is the part that will stay with you long after this video ends. You need to understand who I was before I became the cautionary tale, because the whole story turns on that distance. I spent 18 years building a consulting practice in organizational strategy, the kind of work where companies bring you in when the structure that used to work has stopped working and nobody inside can see why. I was good at it. Not in a way I talked about at family dinners. In a way that showed up in the results and in the referrals and eventually in a body of work that got written about in places my sister never read. I had a methodology. A framework for mapping where a company's real decisions were being made versus where it claimed they were being made. It sounds dry. It changed the outcome of every engagement I ever ran. And somewhere along the way it stopped being mine in the way that ideas stop being yours once they enter the world. It became industry language, the way a useful tool becomes so standard that no one thinks to ask where it came from. I had a daughter, Priya, from a marriage that ended well, which is the rarest kind of ending and the one I am most grateful for. Her father and I simply grew into different shapes and recognized it before it became cruel. We have been friends since. He came to the wedding. He held my hand during the first dance and we both cried. I had a sister, Rachel, 4 years younger, who worked in communications at a firm whose name I will not use but which operated in the same broad industry orbit I did. Close enough that she understood the language. Far enough that she had never had to compete with me directly, which suited us both. And I had a mother, Vera, who got her diagnosis on a Tuesday in February and was gone 14 months later. And those 14 months were the last and the most important work of my life. When it became clear someone had to step back, Rachel and I had the conversation the way families have it, circling the subject before landing on it, everyone already knowing the answer before anyone says it out loud. Rachel had a job she was terrified of losing. I heard that fear and I recognized it, and I could not ask her to put down the rung she was holding. So I stepped back. I withdrew from my existing contracts, gave up my retainer clients, declined the 2 new engagements I had been about to sign, and moved into my mother's spare room with a suitcase and a laptop I barely opened. I did not know then that stepping back from a career in my industry is less like pausing a movie, and more like stepping off a moving train. The train keeps going. The landscape keeps changing. And when you finally step back on, nothing is where you left it. I know it now. I learned it in the way you learn things that cost you something real. My mother died in the autumn. There is nothing to add to that would make it smaller or easier, so I will not try. What I will tell you is what happened in the months after, because that is the part nobody warns you about. When you disappear from a career to care for someone, the people who stayed in the career do not keep your place warm. The industry does not pause. The clients find other people. The referral networks quietly reroute around the gap you left. And when you come back, if you come back, you come back as someone who needs to explain 3 years of absence to people who did not notice you were gone. That is the professional part. The professional part one could manage. The personal part was Rachel. My sister had spent those 3 years constructing a story about me. Not out of cruelty, I want to be fair about that, because understanding someone is not the same as excusing them. She had spent 3 years telling that story because she needed it. She needed me to be the cautionary tale so that the choice she had made at the beginning, when she let me take the train and stayed on it herself, could be the right choice in the telling. I had given up everything to sit with a dying woman. Rachel had kept her job and climbed. And the only way that math works emotionally is if the person who gave things up was the one who made the wrong call. So that is the story she told. At family gatherings, Diana's still figuring things out. At her work events when someone asked, "My sister used to be in the industry," she stepped back. "You know how it is." At my daughter's engagement dinner, when Claire's parents asked what I did, "Diana's between things. She's been between things for a while. She'll land somewhere." Every time, fondly said. Every time. A knife wrapped in cotton. And the reason it worked for as long as it did is because I let it. Because arguing with the story meant explaining the story, and explaining the story meant relitigating a choice I had made and did not regret and did not want to perform for an audience. I had sat beside my mother through 14 months of pain and fear and small mercies. I had held her hand in the last hour. I had been the last voice she heard. There is nothing in my entire professional history that I would trade for that, and I will not reduce it to a debate point about what it cost me. So I stayed quiet. I let Rachel narrate. And I went to my daughter's wedding carrying 3 years of someone else's version of my life in my chest, like a stone I had chosen to stop arguing about. What I did not know was that the story was about to meet someone who knew the original. I want to pause here because I know some of you are feeling the thing I felt during those 3 years. The thing where being quiet starts to feel like agreement. Where letting someone narrate starts to feel like you believe them. I want you to stay with me. Because what happened at that wedding table is not what I planned. I had promised my daughter peace. I intended to keep that promise. But some truths do not wait for permission. Priya's wedding was in June, at a vineyard an hour outside the city. String lights, white chairs, the kind of evening that arranges itself into photographs without trying. I wore the dress I had kept from my old life, the navy one I bought for a keynote I gave 7 years ago. It still fit. Some things do. Rachel arrived the way Rachel always arrived, first to any room that had not yet organized itself around her. New dress. New confidence. The particular radiance of a woman who had recently been promoted and wanted the room to know it without having to say it. By the cocktail hour she had a small group around her. She refreshed people's drinks, she collected laughs, she was at her best. And Rachel at her best is genuinely good company. I watched her from a distance with something close to fondness, because she is my sister and she was my mother's daughter, and she was wearing the same shade of blue my mother used to love without knowing it. Then I watched her find the man she had been circling all evening. He arrived late, slipping into the reception as the dinner was beginning. Mid-50s, composed, silver at the temples, in a suit that fit the way expensive suits fit when they have been worn by someone long enough to forget they are expensive. He moved through the room without taking up more space than he needed. People noticed him the way people notice genuinely powerful people, not because he demanded it but because of the quality of stillness around him. Rachel noticed him the moment he walked in. I watched her recalibrate her evening around his arrival, the way a compass recalibrates around a magnet. His name I would learn later was James Holt. He was the managing director of his firm. He had come because Priya's new husband worked there, and because James Holt was the kind of director who came to young employees' weddings. What Rachel did not know about James Holt, what I did not know yet, I will tell you at the right moment. What Rachel did know was that he was the most important person in the room, and that she wanted him to see her a certain way before the evening ended. The dessert course was where she made her move. She came to my table with James Holt in tow, gliding across the vineyard with the smooth purpose of a woman who has rehearsed this approach without admitting it to herself. I watched her come. I straightened the way I used to straighten before walking into a difficult room. Old muscle memory. The body remembers what it used to need to do. Rachel arrived at my table glowing. She gestured at me the way someone gestures at a piece of furniture they are describing. And she turned to the calm man beside her and she said, "James, this is my sister Diana. The one who couldn't quite commit to the industry. She's been finding herself for a few years now. You know the type." She said it warmly. She always said things warmly. The warmth was the genius of it. It made everyone around her feel that responding would be the unkind thing. I looked up at both of them. I smiled the practiced smile. The great aunt beside me, my mother's sister, 81 years old and the closest thing to Vera still in the world, inhaled through her nose. James Holt looked at my sister for a moment. Then he looked at me. And then he said, "I'm sorry, did you say was?" There is a particular quality of attention, a specific focused stillness, that I have felt from very few people in my professional life. The kind that signals that someone is pulling something from a deep shelf and cannot quite believe what they found there. James Holt had that quality now, directed entirely at me. "Diana Voss," he said slowly. Not a greeting, a confirmation. My sister laughed, a light social laugh, the kind she uses to redirect a conversation that has gone somewhere she didn't intend. The same one. She used to be in the industry, actually. Strategy consulting, before she stepped back. It was a long time ago now. James Holt did not look at her. "The organizational decision mapping framework," he said to me. "The methodology for tracing real versus stated decision structures." I kept my voice very even. "I developed a version of it, yes. A long time ago." He exhaled slowly. Not a sigh. The breath of someone setting down something heavy. "My entire analytics division has run on your version for 4 years," he said. "We call it the Voss model internally. Half my team doesn't know there's a person behind the name." The table had gone quiet. Not the polite quiet of people pretending not to listen. The actual quiet of people who have stopped pretending. Rachel's hand found the back of a chair. James Holt was still looking at me with that focused stillness. "I have been trying to find you for 2 years. Specifically you. Every hiring cycle I put your name back at the top of the list. You had simply vanished from every professional directory, every platform, every referral network. Nobody could locate you." He paused. "Where did you go?" I told him the truth, the way I have learned to tell true things. Plainly, without decoration. "My mother got sick. I went to take care of her. She died. Then I spent some time understanding who I was without the work defining me." The vineyard was very quiet. String lights swayed in the evening air. Somewhere behind us, the band was taking a break between songs. James Holt looked at me for a long moment. Then he said quietly, "So while I had a team searching for you across the entire industry, you were at a hospital. And then at a funeral," I said. "And then figuring out what came next." He nodded once. The nod of a man absorbing information that has rearranged his understanding of a period of time. Beside him, my sister had gone the specific shade of pale that comes not from shock but from recognition. The recognition of someone watching the floor of a story they have been telling give way beneath them. She tried to recover. She let out a small social sound and said, "Of course, the consulting world moves quickly. I mean, it's been 3 years. The landscape has changed enormously. Diana's methodology was important in its time, obviously, but..." "Sandra." James Holt said my sister's name. Quietly. "The way you say a name when you want the person wearing it to understand that you are choosing your next words carefully." My sister went still. "I watched you introduce your sister as someone who couldn't commit to the industry," he said. "At her daughter's wedding. In front of her family. To impress me." He let that land. "And the woman you described is the woman whose framework my entire firm has built its decision architecture on for 4 years. The woman I have been trying to hire for 2 years." He looked at her with the measured consideration of someone who has been giving a person the benefit of the doubt for a long time and has just run out of doubt to benefit. "That tells me something about your judgment that I've been slow to see," he said. "And I'm sorry it took this long." Rachel made a sound I had never heard from her. Small. Airless. The great-aunt beside me pressed her lips together. My son-in-law's colleagues at the next table were no longer pretending to have their own conversation. James Holt turned back to me. And in the way that things sometimes turn in the space of a single evening, he made his offer. He was direct about it, which I respected. He did not dress it as a conversation or a coffee. He said he wanted me at his firm in a leadership capacity. He named the role. He named the salary. He said he would personally announce my return to the industry in whatever way I chose, and that the record of where I had been and what I had done in the intervening years would be told correctly and completely. He reached into his jacket pocket and placed his business card on the table between us. Thick stock. His name. His title. The name of the firm. A card. After 3 years of having nothing to hand anyone at dinner tables. After the rehearsal dinner the night before, when Rachel had fanned her cards across the linen while I sat empty-handed. After every family gathering where someone had asked what I did, and I had watched the light in their eyes make its small adjustment. Here was the best card in the room being placed in front of me by the man who had been searching for me for 2 years. I looked at it, and I felt the full weight of what it was offering. Not just the role and the salary and the return. It was offering me back the version of myself that my sister's 3-year story had slowly, systematically required me to believe I had lost. It was offering me the proof that I had always been worth something. I want to be honest about what happened in me next because this is the part that took me 44 years to be able to do. I wanted it. I want you to know that. Everything in me that had spent 3 years slowly going quiet leaned toward that card the way a plant leans toward the window. Take it. Go back. Be real again. Let the industry know you didn't disappear. Let Rachel read the announcement. Let the record correct itself. The hunger for it was real. I am not going to pretend it wasn't. But I sat with it for one more moment. And what came to me in that moment was not strategy. It was my mother's voice from the last good week. You are not between things, Diana. You are between other people's measurements of you. Those are not the same. She had said it in her hospital bed when I told her I was worried about what would come after. She had said it with her eyes closed, her voice thin, her hands warm around mine. I understood it now, sitting at a vineyard table with a man's business card in the space between us, in a way I had not understood it then. If I took this card, I would be restored. But I would be restored on someone else's terms, in someone else's language, into a shape that someone else had defined as valuable. I would be real again in the exact way Rachel had measured real, the title, the firm, the announcement in the trade press. I would win Rachel's game. And a woman who wins someone else's game has still agreed to play by someone else's rules. I did not want to be restored. I wanted to be built. By my own hands. On my own terms. In a shape I chose. I picked up the card. I held it for a moment so that James Holt would understand I knew exactly what I was about to do. And then I set it gently back down on the linen and slid it toward him. Thank you, I said. And I meant it all the way through. You have no idea what it means that you knew my name. After 3 years of being introduced as someone who couldn't commit, you said my name like it mattered. I will carry that. He waited. Good listeners know when something more is coming. But I'm not going to take the seat, I said. Because you offered to restore me. And I don't need restoring. I need building. My own table. My own terms. The first question at that table is not going to be, what's your title? It's going to be, who did you take care of and what did that teach you? He was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled. A real one, the first I had seen from him all evening. Most people take the chair, he said. In 20 years, you are the first person I have offered it to who said they would rather build the room. He extended his hand. Then I will be your first client. I shook it. And I looked across the table at my sister, who was sitting very still in the way of someone who has just watched everything they spent 3 years building come apart in the space of a dinner course. And for one unguarded moment Rachel looked at me, not with anger, not with performance, with something raw and old and familiar. You always were the one they remembered, she said, almost to herself, almost not to me at all. And in that sentence I finally understood the thing she had said at the beginning, on the phone the night our mother was diagnosed, when she refused to step back. She had not refused because she was heartless. She had refused because she was terrified. She had spent her whole career running from the certainty that if she stepped out of the light for even a moment, the room would forget she existed. My sister was not cruel. She was afraid. She had always been afraid. And she had spent 3 years making me the cautionary tale because the only alternative was to look directly at the choice she had made, and what it had cost our mother to make it. I did not go to her then. There was nothing to repair that night. But I caught her eye across the table, and I gave her a single nod. Not forgiveness. Not yet. Just acknowledgement. 2 sisters raised in the same house, taught the same arithmetic about who gets to matter. One of us had just walked free of it. The other was still counting. She looked away first. I started my own practice 3 months after the wedding. Small. Deliberate. 3 clients in the first quarter. Built entirely on work I chose and terms I set. James Holt was the first. He was true to his word about that. The second client came through a referral from the great-aunt, who turned out to know more people than I had ever credited her for. The third found me through a piece I wrote. Not for a trade publication, not a press release, not an industry announcement. A simple essay about what organizational decision-making looks like when you have spent 14 months in a hospital room watching a person decide, every single day, which things were worth her remaining energy. It turned out that piece reached more people than anything I published in 18 years of career building. Because it was true in a way that methodology papers are not. And people who are making hard decisions recognize truth the way they recognize a clean balance sheet. Immediately and without needing it explained, Rachel left her firm in the months that followed. Not dramatically. Not because James Holt destroyed her. Because the floor of the story she had been standing on was gone, and rebuilding requires a foundation, and she was going to have to find hers from scratch. We are not close now. We might be someday. I hold that possibility the way you hold something fragile with open hands, not gripping. My daughter calls every Sunday. She and her husband are expecting their first child. They asked me to be in the room when the baby comes. I said yes before she finished the sentence. And sometimes, when I am at my desk in the early morning before the day organizes itself around work, I take out the photograph I have kept since the wedding. My mother and me at a conference 15 years ago. Both of us laughing at something outside the frame. Her beaming at a daughter whose keynote she did not understand a word of. I look at it, and I tell her I finally understand what she was trying to give me. I am not between things. I am at the beginning of my own thing. And that turns out to be exactly the right place to be. If someone has spent years introducing you as the version of yourself that serves their story, I want you to hear this. You do not need to be restored. You need to be built. By your own hands. In a shape you choose. The years the room called empty were not empty. They were the fullest work you may ever do. They just happened in a room with no applause in it. And the people who measure you by the applause you generate are only ever measuring what they understand. They have never once been in that room. Do not let them convince you that the room is what made you. You are not between things. You are between other people's measurements of you. Those have never been the same thing. Drop a comment and tell me about the moment you finally understood your own worth outside of someone else's measurement. I read every single one. Subscribe to Real Family Voices. Because next week we are sitting with a woman whose family used her silence against her for a decade. And what happened when she stopped being silent in the one room her family had spent 10 years trying to control. I will see you then.